Tyson Chartier was the 2020 MMA Coach of the Year. He is the head coach of the New England Cartel with a small but strong stable of fighters, the likes of Rob Font and, of course, Calvin Kattar. We get into a lot in this episode. We talk a lot about the fight game, and it was filmed actually right after the Max Holloway and Korean Zombie fight, for your reference. I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. Without further ado, here is Tyson Chartier.
So velvety.
What's up, Coach? Thanks for coming on, man.
How you doing, Chris? Thanks for having me.
You see the fights last weekend? You watched Max and Zombie?
Yeah, I watched. I didn't watch like the extreme early prelims, like the first 2 or 3 fights, but then after I watched the rest of the card, it was man, it was. I didn't get to watch Zombies like walking out of the cage or see his speech because we were at sparring. So we kind of like delayed sparring to watch the end of the Max fight. Then once it ended, we just shut the phones off and started getting to work. But man, that was a fun ending. If you're gonna honestly, like I respect it. Like if you're gonna go out trying to win. You know, like at least he didn't, kind of lose the decision just playing it safe. He's like, he went out, he's like, all right, if I'm going to go out, I'm going to go out on my shield. So I like that.
I mean, and Max is so good, right? And it seems like that step back counter power shots kind of hitting on everybody right now. He finished off Zombie with that. I think Sugar Sean finished Aljo with that. And I'm seeing a lot of guys hit that little step back, like Conor Aldo power shot. Are you noticing that too?
Yeah, you start to see like someone gets like a good highlight, and then all of a sudden everybody's like working on that the next day in the gym, and then you start to see it more, and then it becomes something that people become a lot more defensively responsible towards because they start seeing the big knockouts on it. So yeah, and it seems like there's a little wave of that going on right now. It's fun though.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. Like when a new technique comes online like that, and you start to see the highlights and stuff, and everybody starts, MMA is a little incestual like that, right? Everyone starts to get on it. Are you that way too? Do you kind of forced to pay attention to it, aren't you?
Yeah, I look at, I tell my wife, she doesn't agree, but I tell my wife that like watching the fights is work. Like I'm a fan, so it's great, but it's like you really do start to pick up on new trends, new tendencies, like different ways people are defending, takedowns. You start to see like different ways people are hand fighting, different combinations, different styles in the stand up. Like you definitely pick up on different things and start to see trends when you start to watch all the fights because different camps will implement different things. You might be fighting that camp, so now you leave that fight and implement it into your camp. Then you see those guys start doing it, and it just kind of spreads around like COVID, like everybody, you touch them, they get it, they touch another gym and that gym gets it. And then next thing you know, like everybody's calf kicking.
If you had to like assign a percentage to what you guys are working on, usually like percentage wise, like what are you working on new techniques versus kind of honing what you guys already do well versus strategizing versus resting? What's sort of the math for you as a coach in getting your fighters to where they need to be?
I think there's like 2 approaches. Is like one is like because basics win fights. Like when I come from the wrestling background, it's like the best wrestlers had like one move and everybody knew what it was and you couldn't stop it. So it's like I'm not a big fan of like the new flashy stuff. We'll mix in that stuff. You'll see, Calvin will be doing some spinning stuff and stuff like that. I'm always like, come on guys, let's just keep it basic, But yeah, you get like a splash of the new stuff and the gimmick moves and that keeps the guys excited and it's fresh. But really, it's just like rinse and repeat. It's the basics. It's like finishing a double, finishing a single, like feinting, like all the same stuff you're going to learn as a white belt in jiu-jitsu is still, you get real good at it. It's going to help you as a black belt in jiu-jitsu. And that's kind of my philosophy with coaching is like, it's just rinse and repeat of the basics over and over and over. And then from there, it's like, we're filling holes. Like, people could say, oh, Rob's last fight, he didn't defend takedowns real well. So now we have right now we're big focus on wrestling. One of our guys is fighting a big kicker. So like a lot of the sessions right now are about like addressing kicks, make them miss, check, make them pay, takedowns off kicks, stuff like that. And just keeping all that fresh. So now you're just like recycling things that you've taught them years ago, but now it's a big focus right now because the next guy up has a big fight. The whole team's going to get better at what he needs to get better at. And then you get your specialty guys. Like when we fought Giga, we were bringing in some karate guys and learning how to kind of fight that style. And then next thing you know, you get that in your back pocket. So if you ever go to fight another karate guy, you kind of get that experience. And, same thing with either wrestlers or really good jiu-jitsu guys. And so you start to basically, I was looking at it as like you're building a house. We already got a house, right? Like some of the guys like Rob and Calvin, they already have a great house. But like we're going to reinforce the foundation, make it stronger every time. So like win, lose, or draw, if you come out of a camp, you should be able to say, like, this camp, I got better at this. I'll say it's going to sound really hypocritical, but, like, Rob's almost impossible to guillotine now. And that was because the Pedro Munoz camp was so heavy on defending guillotines. But it's funny because Rob got guillotined in that fight. He got kind of clipped, rocked, he shot on him, he got guillotined. But like since then, Rob's guillotine defense, like before that guillotine happened, like in the camp, his guillotine defense got so good in that camp that that's now something that's kind of like it's just ingrained in him. It's like one of his like strengths is that he's almost impossible to guillotine. Same thing with like the Ian Entwistle camp. The fight never even happened. He got sick cutting weight in England. Fight never even happened. But that camp, we worked for like 8 weeks on defending leg locks. So now Rob is like very proficient in defending leg locks because of that one camp. So I always feel like win, lose, or draw, you should come out of a camp with like knowing like, all right, I lost, but I got really good at this. And now going into the next fight, that's something that you kind of feel is the strength.
Yeah, and that's kind of the tricky part about this sport, right? Is when you throw a monkey wrench in the program and somebody takes a fight on last notice or late notice, like Rob takes. It's really difficult because you might be preparing for something different, and then you get thrown into something new, and now you got to lean on what you know, right? So how was the experience with Rob and going into that late notice? It was a super. I mean, those guys are awesome. I love both Cody and Rob.
If I could describe it in a sentence, it was like, do we want to go to Nashville in 2 weeks and fight Cory Sandhagen? Like, absolutely not. But do we want to earn a fast track opportunity to fight for a title? Yes. So I think based on, Rob's age, where he's at in his career, where his ranking is, and the fact that we didn't have a fight, if we didn't do that, like the opportunity, it was like very hard to say no to that opportunity because Rob's goal is still to try to win a UFC title. And that would have literally, if we won that fight, Sugar Sean is probably calling us out in Boston.
Yeah.
I think he'd probably call us out instead of Cheeto.
And I love Cory. I think he's a great fighter, but I do feel like he sort of, I don't want to say made a boring fight, but I think, there's a certain way that you should try to perform. And it's not just about winning, it's about how you perform. And it almost seems like he drained his own, stock a little bit by performing the way he chose to. Yeah, he got the win, but Dana also walked out.
Winning is always the most important thing, right? And Cory did what he had to do to win. I can't sit back here as the coach, the guy on the other side of the cage that's not even on his team, and say how bad his arm was or wasn't. He fought with it for 4 more rounds, so he was good enough to fight. But I think he was pretty injured. You go into that kind of like that survival mode, like, all right, like I don't feel like very good, but I have to do what it takes to win. Like he was smart to do what it takes to win. And in that moment, you do make a decision as a fighter. It's like, all right, do I want to just win or do I want to cement or like put the nail in the coffin for like, I'm the next guy for the title shot, And I think he maybe just focused on the win and didn't really think ahead. But maybe that's what got him the win, because maybe if he thought ahead too much, he would have lost focus and could lose the fight. So it's a tough balance. It's like you can't knock a fighter for what decision they make. But like on the flip side, if that's me going into the fourth round and my guy's the one kind of not taking risks, being on top, and even it's scary. Is like perfect example. Going into the Dan Ige fight, going into the fifth round, we're up 3-1 probably. Ige's pretty dangerous. And I said to Calvin, I was like, listen, like you got to put your foot on the gas pedal. We're trying to earn a title fight. You got to show that you're ready for a title fight. This is what champions do in the champion rounds. And so we could have just had to keep doing the same thing and like dominate and get a 4-1 win or whatever. But it was like my thing to him is I know he wants to fight for a title. I know how kind of the UFC brass thinks. It was like, listen, though, put your foot on the gas pedal, go for a finish. Like you can earn a title shot with a big finish here. So it's like I can't say what his coaches saw or didn't see, but I think if the roles were reversed, I probably would have been maybe pushing a little bit for like, listen, like try to sell it, get the finish. Like you want a title shot, like this isn't, that's fine. Like if you just finish another round like you did the last three, like you're not going to get a title shot off this win. But like if you're too hurt to do any more, that's fine. But like if you can get a finish, you got to go for a finish. And he did go for a Darce in the fifth round, but that was more because we kind of put ourselves there. But yeah, I like what you're saying is I think his stock did go. It's like it didn't go down, but it didn't go up. Like it didn't go up like it could have if he had like, even if you just went like bonkers in the fifth round and tried to kill us, then I think people would have been like forgot about the second, third, and fourth round. They'd be like, all right, this guy deserves the shot, But
yeah. I was talking to my friend Zach, who reps Nate Diaz, and he made the comment. He's like, there's you could be three things in MMA. He said you could be a GOAT, you can be a world champion, or you can be a legend. And there can be combinations of that. But like, I mean, Zombie's a good example, right? He didn't win any championships, but he's a legend because he fights a certain way. And not everyone can be a champion, right? So are you constantly sort of trying to curate the best opportunities and the best performance for each of your fighters, no matter obviously who they are? Or are you always trying to go for a championship?
I think the goal is always to try to win and get towards the championship. Like, obviously there might come a time where you're like, all right, that's not realistic anymore. Like, let's figure out something else and let's take fun fights or whatever. So your mindset could change on that. But yeah, I think you just got to focus on winning. I think if you try to be one of the other things, it doesn't come off as organic sometimes. Like, because you see other people that have tried to kind of go down that Nate Diaz path where they're like, oh, I'm just going to be the exciting fighter. It's like, well, that's cool, but that works for Nate. Like that, you
Yeah.
can't be the guy that's going to go in there and go 500. And just because you're exciting, the UFC's not going to keep you around.
Yeah.
Um, so it is tough because it's like at the end of the day, like winning is the most important thing unless you're a star already. Like
Yeah.
Michael Chandler could probably lose all his fights and still get like headlined or top bill, pay-per-view fights because of who he is and how exciting he is. But like a guy coming into the UFC can't be that way. You're going to lose two and get cut. So it's definitely there's a time and place for all of it, and like priorities shift as your career progresses, and kind of like also on top of that is like what division you're in and who the other stars are, because you're not going to become a star unless you're mixing it up with other stars.
How are you looking at things? Are you really keeping an eye on competition all the time? Are you like on I don't know, sure dog every day checking people's records or significant strikes, or are you just kind of focused on what you guys do and keeping your eye on the prize?
No, I just like I said, I watch all the UFC fights. I kind of see what's going on, trending, new guys that are coming in, especially if they're in the divisions that my guys fight in, and you kind of keep your, finger on the pulse, so to speak. And then from there, it's just like we got to focus on what we can do. Like, if we had a team motto, it would be like focus on what you can control, and
Mm.
what we can control is getting in the gym, getting better, and being prepared for whatever comes. And that's kind of like what we do. And then as things come we react to them. You kind of follow your gut instinct a lot of those times because there's really no blueprint on like when to say yes, when to say no, like what fights make sense, what fights don't. It's really just you're trying to figure everything out on the fly. But I think a lot of that comes with just staying in the gym and being prepared and then going out there. Because at the end of the day, like you take anybody in the top 15, they can all beat each other, like all of them. Like if people think, oh, number 15 is going to fight number four, it's like, oh, he's going to get killed. It's like, maybe the odds will say that, but like realistically, like any of these guys can beat each other on any night. At this level, it's like whoever makes the first mistake will probably lose. So it's just there's such a small margin for error. So, we can't worry about a lot of the other stuff. Like I think one thing we try to preach is like just focus on what you can control. And what that is like get in the gym, keep your
Mhm.
weight down, stay in shape, and like work your recovery. Like if you're not doing that and then all this other stuff happens, like you're not even gonna be prepared for it. So like just stay prepared, keep the weapon sharp, and when those opportunities come, you can jump on them or avoid them.
And you're an old school guy. How have you seen like the training methodology change? Or maybe it's just changed for you over the years. Obviously, just sharpening the tools and getting more efficient, like going from just hard training back in the days. And now how are you balancing guys out and making sure that they rest when they need to rest, maybe when they don't want to rest?
Back when we were training, like it was like you sparred 3 times a week with small gloves, like 5-5. You're doing like 15 sparring rounds a week with little gloves, and people are getting knocked out all the time. I got knocked out in training, and it was like back then people would like laugh about it. And then you were just kind of fighting. Recovery wasn't a thing people talked about. It was just like be tough, be tough. It was almost like wrestling mentality in the sport of MMA is really what it was. Just push through everything. Injuries don't happen. You just fight, just fight, just fight. Concussions weren't a thing. You laughed about those, and then all of a sudden you start to see it swing really far the other way, which is like recovery. It almost got delusional where like recovery was more important than training, and people were like, "Oh, I got to take 3 days off, my HRV's off," and it's like, all right, cool, but like the main ingredient of beef stew is beef. Like if you don't have beef, you don't have beef stew. So it's like
Right.
you can't just not have beef. So it's and you're starting to see it come back now where like people are like, yeah, recovery's an important part of it, but like the main ingredient is always going to be the work, which is training. And I think people are starting to realize that kind of like it's getting back towards the middle now where like yes, sleep and recovery and nutrition is important and that's stuff that you can control. So let's lock that in, but that should be an automatic. We're all professionals. But like
Yeah.
the training, the work is where it's at. Like so if you have to like you're feeling down one day and you're real tired, you didn't get a lot of sleep and you have 3 sessions like and you're going to skip 2 of them, it's not going to be like the team session, which is MMA. Maybe you
Yeah.
don't hit mitts that day, or maybe you don't do strength and conditioning, or maybe you don't go for your jog. But like, I just feel like my idea is like, no, you come to team training and don't go for the jog. No, don't go for the
Yeah.
jog and not come to team training because now you're hurting your teammates, and it's like what did you get better at today, you know? And
Are you guys more like on the tip of leaning on the PI and biometrics and all these sorts of scientific advancements, or are you guys more into like the Rocky training? What's sort of the methods?
no, we try to find a balance of a balance of the two. Like, you know, kind of like, are you hurt or are you injured mentality? Like, you know, because everybody's hurt, you know, but if you're injured, you gotta dial back. Because like, if you train harder on this, it could get worse. Like, yeah, we're gonna be smart. But if you're just like, you know, oh, my knuckle hurts, like, you don't even have a fight, just get in the gym and train. Just don't punch anything with it. But like, we do lean on the PI. I think we were one of the right when the PI opened, we went out there for like a week before UFC 220, right when it opened, and I've leveraged them quite a bit since then. Whenever my guys get injured, you know, we follow you know, a lot of the trends that they do a lot of research there, and then they share it with us. Like, I think it was like, I don't remember the number, but like the biggest percentage of pullouts happen 3 weeks out of a fight. That's kind of when like the training's hard, but your weight's getting to that point where it's like you're not as energetic, you're a little lethargic, and that's where a lot of the injuries were happening. So, you know, the UFC will label that, you know, that should be your down week. So you kind of like,
Can you talk a little bit and just tell people what the UFC offers as far as their PI and sort of what it's all about? Because I don't even know if people really know.
yeah, so it's their headquarters. They have a big physical therapy office. They have a strength and conditioning group, and then they have like a gym that you can train at. So you can go there. Like, you know, we are not local to the UFC, but if to Vegas, but if you're in Vegas, you can go there every day, and they just give you free food and free PT and free strength and conditioning with like a coach that takes you through a program. So you can do
Wow.
that. You can leverage that every single day if you live in Vegas. If we go there, like if we fly out to Vegas, we can leverage that, and we'll get, you know, the fighters will get like free food. We can schedule PT, and then we can also schedule mat time where we can go up and, you know, do a team session or whatever. They also give you free supplements while you're there. I mean, they ship you the supplements too. But so like for the remote people, is like when you're pretty much year round, you're getting supplements from them, that you can use for training. And then when you're in camp, 6 to 8 weeks out of a camp, depends on inventory. They'll start sending you icon meals. So you get like meals for the week. They show up at your house I think it's every Friday, in like a freezer, like an ice box or whatever. And you have meals for the week that have like all the macros there with barcodes. You can put them in like MyFitnessPal and everything, track your eating.
Wow.
That's free. They have a mental coach, this kid Micah, that used to be like a Major League Baseball player. So he's in there like coaching the mind. So you can schedule sessions with him. That's free. Yeah, and then they have like cryo. They have a cold tub, a hot tub, sauna. You know, everything you can want is in there. Like, to the people in Vegas, it's a huge advantage over the people that aren't in Vegas, because they can pretty much do like 50% of the camp at the PI, and it's free.
Yeah, I mean that can make the difference of being able to give up your day job or not and just move to Vegas and pursue your career, right?
Yeah, I always joke, if we were in Vegas, I think we'd have a lot more people. It's
Yeah.
yeah, no, it's definitely an advantage to those, and I think it's definitely helped those gyms in Vegas too, because they've all grown. Because a lot of
Yeah.
people that like, I think if all the gyms in Vegas were in different places, they would obviously have less people. You know, and that's not a knock on those coaches or anything like that, like, or the gyms, but like the advantage to being in Vegas is tremendous. So when you have the UFC PI, and then you have Extreme Couture right down the road with a coach like Erik, it's like, why wouldn't you do it? If you're not happy with where you're at, why wouldn't you go there?
2020 Coach of the Year. That's a pretty big honor. What was it like to sort of go through the pandemic in this industry, and what was the difference between Apex fighting versus Arena? Because the Apex came to be, which is kind of like the silver lining of all these things, right? It's like something like the Apex comes to be from the pandemic, and now every other week we have a fight at the Apex. What was it like going through the pandemic for you?
I think our team was built for the pandemic. You know, it was we were already small, secluded training, like fight camps built around the fighter, small groups. You know, it wasn't, you know, we don't have members or anything like that. It's just a fight team. And so when the pandemic happened, like nothing changed for us. It was literally like, oh, we have four guys in the room. You know, obviously we're bigger now than we were in 2020, but you know, we'd have like three or four guys in the room. It could be two coaches and two or three training partners, and we're
Mm.
putting Calvin through the ringer to go to a UFC main event. So to us, it was like, this is what we do. To all the other camps, they were like, where do we train? What do we do? Like, the coaches are having to travel to people's garages and figure out all this stuff. And so it was a big shock to, I think, a lot of people, because they're trying to like, to them, it felt like they were putting together these band-aid camps. Like, all right, well, this is good enough. This is better than what we could have done. You know, this is our only option. We made the best of it. And to us, we were getting like 100% like normal camp. it was kind of nice. And then, you stack those chips. It was like, you're driving down, I live in New Hampshire, drive down to Boston, and there's like I Am Legend movies where there's like no cars anywhere. There was no
Right?
traffic. It was like literally like, it was awesome. Honestly, like as scary as the pandemic was, like while it was happening, it's like I do have fond memories because I think that's when, Calvin really leveled up. He kind of got onto the national scene, being on that first UFC fight back, UFC 249. Our team leveled up. Obviously, we got a record. We were top three gym of the year that year. I got the award for the coach. I think there was a lot of eyes on MMA because there was nothing else to do, and we were one of the
Yeah.
first sports back. So I think we all got a lot of eyes on us, and it was like right place, right time for us. So I think we got a lot of clout during the pandemic just because I think we were already a team that was built for it. Other coaches that, some from some bigger gyms, they were like calling me like, how are you guys doing this? I'm like, this is just what we do. They were trying to navigate that. And a lot of them, I think, liked it. And I think a lot of fighters liked the smaller group training, the individualized training, which is like, honestly, best case scenario for a fighter is you have your
Yeah.
coaches being like, yes, we're going to have a team practice, which is really just a group private with you. And we're going to bring in a couple training partners and we're going to put you through a session instead of having 40 guys on the mat with two coaches. Now you got three coaches with two guys working an hour and a half on your time. Way better for the fighter, but way harder for the coaches because now all these coaches are like, they got 8, 10 guys in camps. They're trying to run around and get to all these privates, and it's way more taxing on the coaches. So it's like you can't scale it. But
Right.
man, I have fond memories of that. But I definitely hate the Apex. Like the Apex is, it's like even we went in Nashville, we lost, whatever, but it was still like the crowd was cheering. You felt the energy. You felt the walkout. Even if they're booing you, I'd rather come out in Nashville and get booed for whatever reason. Everybody loves Cory Sandhagen. They did like Rob that night, but like on the way out, we're getting booed. But I'd rather get booed than just walk out in the Apex. It's like
At least there's
we're
energy,
very,
right? There's energy
yeah,
to
it's
feed
the
off
energy
of.
and that's not a knock. Like I get why the UFC does the shows in the Apex. We're grateful that the guys still got to fight, but it has gotten to the point now where I think like you're kind of relieved when you get a fight offer and it's not the Apex. You're like, okay, good fans, because it's just like not only that, it's like difficult because like, the energy's low and it's kind of like it's not as exciting because you've done it so many times. But the other part is like some of these guys, like if you're not a main event, your mom and dad aren't going to the fight. Like they're like, hey, can we get 2 tickets? Nope, sorry. So like I've had guys that went to the UFC, fought multiple times, and never had a family member in the crowd, and now they're released. So it's like for me, it's like these guys work so much. Their parents put so much into it. Their girlfriend, their wife, whatever. They put so much into it, and then they can't be a part of that like that first walk, even if they lose. They're there. They got to see him do that. They dreamt of that moment, and then now they have that taken away. I understand that the UFC like they did what they had to do, but I definitely think there could be little tweaks that could make it way easier. Like I suggested, just have 4 seats on one side of the arena and 4 seats on the other side. This is for the blue corner. This is for the red corner. And then you just have like 2 lines in the hallway. Okay, like fight one is here, blue corner. Bring in the first 4 people. You're here to see John. Get in your seats. The fight ends. Get the hell out of here. Like don't no one cares if they watch the whole card. They just want to go see their son fight. So if they just had 4 seats for the red corner, 4 seats for the blue corner, and they just shuffle people through every fight, you would need like one UFC employee to like help navigate that. I just think it would be like that. They could do so much with that little change. I think
Yeah.
that would make the Apex a lot more. I don't want to say tolerable because we tolerate it, but I think it would take the sting out a lot.
Yeah. What are some of the other things that you kind of see could use some tweaking and maybe rule sets or even, when it comes to the fighting or judges, what are some things that you see can be more positively changed?
I definitely think we need to address like the judging. There's easy ways to fix. There's so many we could debate on how to fix it, but aside from that, go upstream even more. Like we need oversight on the commissions. Dealing with an athletic commission, it's literally like Judge Dredd. It's like judge, jury, executioner. So
Yeah.
like listen to how crazy it is. If you want to appeal a decision to a commission, like let's say you're the commission, and
You
I'm
get
like, hey, listen,
DQ'd for something
yeah, yeah.
stupid.
Or something stupid, or like, yeah, some bullshit happens. Like you DQ'd and it really didn't happen, or whatever. Like now, you make that decision, or the people that you pay made that decision. The people that you work with every week, they made that decision. Now I'm gonna go and I'm gonna appeal to you, and you're gonna have your people look at it under your guidance, and then if we want to have like a hearing and bring in specialists, whether it be doctors or whatever, or other judges, then like you have to like sometimes in some cases like pay to fly in those specialists, and then we're gonna have a hearing, and now you're gonna decide whether or not you messed up. Like that's like going to a person who like beat someone up and then appealing to them saying, hey, can you find yourself at fault for this? Like,
Yeah.
what's your decision? They're not going to find themselves guilty. And I think there's been enough precedent set to say that like the system is broken. You get the ABC, the Association of Boxing Commissions, that gets together and tries to come up with unified rules or whatever. But the reality is, they literally have no oversight onto the commissions. Like the commissions don't answer to them. That's just like the commissions playing nice, be like, hey, well, loop together. But at the end of the day, like there's nobody governing any of the commissions. So it's
Right.
the commissions govern themselves. And if they make a bad decision or something unfair happens, you can appeal to them and they're gonna be like, yeah, go F yourself. Like, perfect example is like, I had a fighter in Vegas at the Apex drop a kid with a knee. The kid falls down, fight's over. Drop knee to the belly. And then the kid walks over, he puts his hands up, like, yeah, I won. And the rest like, oh, back up. And the kid's like, for what? And he goes, oh, low blow. And it was like the replay's playing in the stands, and you can just see him hit him right to the belly. He drops, and the kid like got his 5 minutes for the low blow,
Oh my God.
stood back up, and then the next round tears my guy's shoulder out of the socket, and like never wins a fight after that. Like and so one thing is UFC paid us our win money. They were like, that was bullshit. We're paying you. Like the UFC, they do stand up stuff like that all the time. So they paid my guy. I went and appealed the decision because I'm like, this is egregious. I appealed it.
Yeah.
You guys have replay in your bylaws, and they're like, no, we don't. Because I looked up all the rules. I put in a formal appeal. And they're like, we don't have replay. They're like, no, and it's the ref's the sole arbiter. He didn't decide to ask for help. He didn't pool the referees on the side. So there's nothing we can do about this. But then the next week, they have a replay light next to the cage. It was actually 2 or 3 weeks later because the appeal took a week to go through. But like, so they denied the appeal, but then a week later or
They
2 weeks
fixed it.
later, they had a replay. Now replay's in use. But before that, before my appeal, they had always said like replay's not allowed. Now, no rules were changed. All I did was point out that you guys have replay here in your bylaws and you're not using it. So don't say you don't have replay. So they're like, yeah, but the referee's the sole arbiter. He didn't make the call that night. There's nothing we can do. So I'm like, all right, cool. But like you have replay. And the next thing you know, they're using replay. I had a guy that had to get his shoulder torn out in an instance where he had already won the fight. I had to have a guy go through that for them to just acknowledge that they already had replay and they just were too lazy to use it. It's like, and people, they keep, oh, you're professional athletes, just suck it up. You're just complaining. It's like, all right, imagine if you had to go to the DMV every time you wanted to get paid. Think about that. Like, you have to take a number, you have to sit there. Like, you have someone there that hates their job and they're just like, what do you want? I don't care. Sorry, the rules are like, that's what it's like sometimes dealing with these commissions. Like, it's like going to the DMV, but they like your paycheck is at stake.
And bureaucracy and no checks and balances, right?
No checks and balances. They literally, they're Judge Dredd. So it's like,
What else? I mean, as far as rules, weight cutting.
I mean, the UFC is doing a little big. They offer help with the weight cut too. The PI, they offer weight cut with
Mhm.
that. Like, yeah, it'd be nice not having to cut weight, But one FC is trying to do it a different way, and even over there, it's like it can get a little wanky. Um, yeah, it'd be nice if weight cutting wasn't such a big part, but
Do you think adding more weight classes is the answer to that?
I think you'll just honestly like for some people it'd be the answer, but other people would entice them to try to go down. So I think it would be like a net nothing. You've got the guys that are like, maybe they're okay size 55 or they'll never make 45, but if you added a 150, they might try it. So then
Right.
I think it's going to entice just as many guys to stay or go up, just as many guys will go down. I think what you're seeing is the more weight classes would be a benefit to the UFC just because I know they want title fights. They're not inventing a BMF belt because they want to give out more belts. They're inventing BMF belts because they probably contractually need to for ESPN. I think that was something with like if they have a show at Madison Square Garden, it has to be a title fight. So they made a BMF belt, which is cool. I love it. Um, but I think it probably would make the UFC's life a little bit easier because they wouldn't have to scramble of like what title fight's going to be on this pay-per-view and stuff like that because they'd have more options for title fights.
What should be the penalty for losing weight? You see a lot of guys. I think strategically losing weight is as it seems to me the sort of just through my untrained eye, guys. It would make sense for guys to strategically say, "Fuck the weight cut. I'm going to come in over because a W is the most important thing." Do you see guys doing that, or do you think it's an honest mistake? And how do you actually penalize that?
Problem is sometimes it is an honest mistake. Like I know I've had a couple guys in this way. Like, it was with Rob with the Cheeto fight. It was just, we took the fight 7 weeks out. He had just come off being on a vacation. We knew he was like heavier than we wanted to be. We talked to the PI, we talked to the nutrition team, our nutrition team, and like we were like, all right, we can do this, but everything needs to go perfect. And 4 weeks into it, everything didn't go perfect. So we were like, okay, we're a little higher than we want to be, but we can still do it. So to that point, it's like you're not going to pull out. You're going to be like, all right, let's just try to dial this in. And it wasn't like he was doing anything wrong. It was just, just stressors of life. His girl got pregnant during camp. It's like, and then all of a sudden he's like doing these doctor's appointments, and like just life gets in the way sometimes. It's not that anybody's being unprofessional, and then the stress of like all of a sudden you're taking a short notice fight against a really tough kid in a main event in the UFC, and then now you're like, oh shit, I'm gonna be a dad. And then like you need everything to go perfect for you to like always be losing weight. Like anybody who's ever taken a diet, stress can definitely affect that. So it's like I think sometimes it's honest mistakes, but I do think there's gamesmanship sometimes, like where people come in and they're like, oh, I'm just not going to cut these. I'm only making 12 and 12 anyway. Take my $3,000 and I'm going to still get 12 on the other side and win. It's not a big deal to me.
So maybe multiple offenders, if you're doing that more than once, maybe then a penalty might kick in or something.
And I do think the UFC does do that sometimes where they make you go up in weight classes, because when we missed weight against Cheeto, that was Rob's like what 15th UFC or 16th UFC fight, and the UFC was like, listen, like this is your mulligan, like don't let it happen again. Like you've never been, an offender before. Like we'll give you the benefit of the doubt this time, but if it happens again, like it'll be more severe.
From a technical standpoint, as far as actual inside the ring techniques, should guys be able to knee each other in the head, do stuff that maybe is a little more old school, that is more, just full on?
I'm like pretty cool with the rules as they are. I think you could probably do away with the 12 to 6 elbow rule. Like it's kind of, just don't elbow to the back of the head. I think that's probably fine. Like I think there's enough injuries in the sport as it is. And there's a lot of, anytime a star gets hurt, that hurts the UFC, that hurts the brand, that hurts the fans, that hurts the fighter. It's like, I don't think we need to make it more dangerous or anything like that. It's already exciting. I don't think like I'll watch a ONE FC fight and I don't think it's any more exciting because it's just fighting, right? But then when I watch PFL and they can't elbow, I'm like, oh man, it's a big disadvantage not being able to elbow in certain positions. So it's like, I'm used to the unified rule set. So I think like adding to it, I don't really care about adding to it, but definitely don't want to take away from it. Like I don't like how they can't elbow in PFL, because I think that is part of the sport, But yeah, I just think there needs to be like more penalties for like fouls and stuff. Like how many times can you like go like this and get 4 warnings, and then you poke them in the eye and you still get a warning? It's like,
dude, the worst injury of my life was an eye poke. No joke. It's just it's the worst thing ever.
well, I just had a fighter fight in Singapore last weekend, and he got rocked early, and he shot him for a takedown, head outside the single, ran him to the fence, and then pushed him against the fence, went to run the pipe, and the guy just grabbed the fence, and then like pulled him right back in, and then Goddard was like, "Careful," but then like the guy stayed up, separated, and then knocked my guy out, and I'm like, that's not why he got knocked out, but I feel like you gotta stop the fight there, take the point, and like I think even one point further is like, why don't you get the position? My argument on this is like, if I'm on top of someone and they try to get off me, and I grab the fence to hold them down, they're gonna stop the fight, they're gonna take a point, and they're gonna stand me up. But you didn't actually gain that position. I stopped you from gaining the position because I grabbed the fence, but you don't know that you were gonna get up, right? But you'll still get the position back. I'll lose the dominant position. But if I'm shooting a takedown on you and I'm about to maybe finish and you grab the fence and stop the takedown, the argument there is like, well, we can't put you on the ground because we don't know that you would have ended up there. But on the flip side, you don't know that he would have gotten up when I grabbed the fence, but you still stand me up. So like in MMA, it's definitely,
that should be zero tolerance, right? If you do something like that, it's zero tolerance.
at the least it should be a point, and then they break apart at a point, and then reset him or whatever, and then the guy should be, worst case, take the point, put him back on the fence with the head outside single, and now wrestle from there. Or like I think you should just get the takedown. You get to start on the bottom in half guard or something. But I was talking to one of the UFC referees the other day about it. We were having a debate, and he was like, "Yeah, but like you don't know that like Parker would have finished the takedown." I'm like, "You're right." I go, "But now if I was on top and you bucked me off and I grabbed the fence to stop from getting bucked off, what would you do?" He's like, "I would stand you up and take a point." I go, "But you don't know that he would have got up."
Well, the problem is why did he have to grab the fence in the first place? It was for a reason, right?
Right. So I think there's got to be a zero tolerance policy on that. Like, because I don't even think a point's enough. So like if you're like, let's just say you're Israel Adesanya and you're fighting Jan Blachowicz again, right? And you know if like you go to the ground, it's probably not going to end well. Or I mean, we could think of just think of the best striker that has no ground game versus a great grappler that has no striking. When those
Yeah.
fights happen, that striker will grab the fence all day and let you deduct 10 points if you need to, as long as it keeps him on the feet, because he's just trying to finish the fight. So he's like, all right, I'll gladly give you a point if it means I don't have to be on the ground, and then I'm going to try to knock you out. But like the grapplers don't get that advantage. They lose positions when they commit. If you're on top, you commit a foul, you lose your position. Like you
Yeah.
have to stand back up with that striker. But if you're the grappler trying to get the fight to the ground and they commit a foul that stops it from going to the ground, you just get split up and maybe get a point deduct. But now you have to
Right.
go through tread those dangerous waters of closing distance, getting another takedown. So it's yeah, it is tough. I just think there could be, little changes like that. Like if you're not supposed to grab the fence, there should be no warnings.
Mm.
Like you can control, like literally, it's like a 12-year-old could tell you that. Like I have a 7-year-old, a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old. I tell my 7-year-old, you don't hit your brother, and then he's like, yeah, but like he did this. I was like, but it doesn't matter. There's never going to be an excuse that's going to be. I'm going to say like, oh, that makes sense. I know why you hit him. Like the answer is always going to be, don't do it. I just feel like if they started taking a point every single time someone laced their fingers through the fence, people wouldn't do it anymore. But it's just something you can do. It's frustrating, but I think that's just part of growing pains too. We still are a pretty young sport.
For sure. Yeah, I think people don't recognize that, but it's come a long way for sure. What if you had to pick a favorite fight that you've seen live, what would it be?
Man, it was I was at when Leon knocked out Usman. I was sitting like third row right with Calvin. He was there as a guest fighter and I was there with him in Salt Lake City. And this like just the situation, like like you knew he was losing. It was like okay, everybody's kind of like we're sitting around all Usman's teammates and his daughter's to the right of us, and it was like all right, Usman's gonna win, and then all of a sudden, bam! It's like 1 minute left in a 25 fight, and then that happens. It was wild. It was like the crowd was just in awe. Yeah, it was pretty insane. Like just saying I was there for that. But I'd say my biggest MMA moment, like that would probably be my most memorable fight. But and I know you didn't ask this, but my biggest MMA moment was that we were there when the Conor threw the dolly at the bus. Um,
Oh,
the crazy part is like so he threw the dolly, it hit Michael Chiesa's seat, and then he got glass on his eye or whatever. Well, rewind to 30 seconds. Calvin Kattar's sitting in Michael Chiesa's seat. I'm sitting with him. And then all of a sudden the UFC comes and they're like, Tyson, Calvin, you got to go to the other bus. We're like, all right. So we get off, we stand on the other bus, and all hell breaks loose. I pulled out my camera. I have a video on my camera of like all of a sudden we just people and we didn't know what was going on. All of a sudden we just see like all these guys in tracksuits running around, and then someone's like, I think it's Conor, and then we see like Conor come around the other side of the bus and like grab a fence gate, and he's trying to throw it at the other side of the bus, like because you only saw the video of one with Conor run up with a dolly, but then he ran around after that, grabbed a crowd dividers, like those big fences, and he had that, and then one of the UFC guys came over and like grabbed that from him, and that guy ended up, I'm pretty sure, breaking his wrist. And then all of a sudden, like as fast as it started, the whole group ran out back where they came in from, and it was like we got off the bus, so then they got that bus out of there, brought us back to the hotel, and it was just a crazy like day or two. Because now all of a sudden there's these mobs of Russians like walking in the hotel lobby. You didn't want to go anywhere near the Russians because you thought like, well, clearly they're going to know I'm not on their side. Not on any side, but I'm not Russian, so I'm not on their side. And you didn't know if something was going to pop off between like all these Irish guys and the Russian guys. And then it's just like
mm,
the energy. And like we were literally like, I don't know, man, this whole card might get canceled. We just thought like,
that much drama.
yeah. So
Wow, that's crazy, man.
it was, but just being there for that was pretty crazy.
What do you think about Khabib? Does Khabib go down as one of the greats?
One of them.
Because
Yeah.
to me, like, can you be one of the greats without having adversity? There's no like Ali Frazier moments. He really never lost a round. Domination.
I don't even, and this is like, here's the thing is like, I'm not saying anything negative about Khabib. Like, he's one of the greatest fighters of all time. He's on Mount Rushmore. Mad respect to what he's done coming out of the region he's come out of. Respect to his dad. Like, their style, it's changed MMA, it's changed the sport. Like, he seems like, he's not, like, he's just an amazing fighter. Yeah. Like, um, nothing against him personally, nothing against his fighting style. But, like, if we're going to say, like, in my opinion, what makes someone great, and I'm speaking totally ignorant here. Like, UFC 249, we were on that card. We trained for 18 weeks. We were supposed to fight Jeremy Stevens in March. Then they moved it to April. Now the whole world ends except for that card. So we still
Mm.
train. We're training in garages. There's no gyms open. We're training in driveways, doing whatever it takes to get to this fight, not knowing, are we fighting on an aircraft carrier? Are we fighting on a secret island? Where are we fighting on? Where are we going? He pulled out of that fight, and I don't even remember the details, but I remember thinking like, oh wow, like he's pulling out like he couldn't deal with this like we did. Like this is the best in the world, and then other times where like Rob was on death's door for the Cheeto fight, and we
Yeah.
decided this. I called the UFC. I was like, listen, we can keep trying to cut weight and just still miss and go to the hospital, and there's no main event tomorrow, or we can come in heavy, be shamed with it, and the right thing to do. Cheeto still gets to fight, and then
Yeah.
Cheeto can make that decision. But we're not going to take that away from, let us know what you want us to do because this is our fault. We messed up, you know.
Mm.
But how many times do you see like there's times where he went to the hospital without telling the UFC and just pulled out of the fight. Like they could have maybe kept that fight, like happened with who is it? Kamzat, like the UFC jumped in, they're like, no, like we're gonna just don't cut any more weight, we'll figure something out. Like though you take that option away from the UFC when you just go to the hospital and then say I'm out of the fight. Like and then how many times did he pull out of fights? It's like and that's the thing is like that's where I'm speaking out of ignorance because I don't know what maybe he just had bad luck and he legitimately had like what is it like 13 reasons to pull out of fights or something. Um, if you're pulling out of that many fights, you gotta assume that some of those are probably fights you could have fought. I feel like another thing that like, and I'm not trying to be controversial because I respect him tremendously. Like,
Me
but
too.
another thing is like, if you're the greatest in the world, you don't have to say you're the greatest in the world or ask to be the greatest in the world. Like, and like I said, maybe that's because of like that was a goal him and his dad had. Maybe I don't know. Like, I'm not trying to. That's none of my business. But him winning his last fight and then coming out and being like, I want to be ranked number one. I think if you're the baddest mother effer in the world, you don't have to ask for that. And I
Yeah.
think, in my opinion, I'm not saying he's not the number one pound for pound fighter at that time. Like I think he probably was, right? But like if you are the number one pound for pound fighter in the world, part of being that great or being the GOAT is you don't have to ask people to tell you you are. I think you let your work talk for itself and
I mean, I agree with you. I just when I look at him and I look at some of the people that I admire the most throughout MMA, he just doesn't. I can't really point to a fight where I'm like, this guy, the greatness is just oozing from him.
well, I think one thing
Uh,
that kind of I just think there is a little bit of a double standard when it comes to him and certain things like we always say like he's a great guy, he's this and that. I don't know him,
yeah,
but like what did him and Connor do that was that much different in that day? If we're just talking like street rules, right? Like what's his name? Who's the guy he slapped? The Russian kid that I can't remember his name. Lobov. Lobov supposedly calls Khabib a bitch in an interview. So now Khabib takes five of his friends and goes up to him 5-on-1 or 5-on-2 or whatever it was and slaps him in the face because it's disrespectful to call me a bitch. Well, it's also disrespectful to slap someone when you have a group of guys around you, right? So Connor gets a group of his guys and goes after him. Like they did the same thing. We talk about honor and all that stuff, and then Khabib goes and wins a fight fair and square, but then he jumps out of the cage and tries to kick one of his corners. Like, did the kid deserve it? Probably. I don't know. But you can't play this like you can't be both, like you can't be honor, respect, I'm this, I'm that, but then also do the other things and not want the negative consequence. But I honestly, whoever's PR person has done a great job because like we always say, like great guy, great guy. I've always kind of like thought that like him and Connor were both in the wrong in that whole thing, but somehow it came out that Connor's this scumbag and Khabib's this honorable person that protects his friends. Connor literally did the same thing.
it was fucking entertaining though, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was,
Send location, send location.
yeah, it was.
So, you said Mount Rushmore. Give me real quick. Who's your Mount Rushmore for fighters, and then who's your Mount Rushmore for coaches? Give me four of each.
Okay, so fighters, I think you got to put GSP, John Jones, Anderson Silva, and then man, it's like I think you do put. It's like this is like is it Mighty Mouse or is it Khabib?
Oof.
Like Mighty Mouse was in a pretty weak division, like but he still was beating everybody. I think,
in spectacular fashion.
yeah, I'm gonna go. It's a tie for them too because I can't really pick one, but it would be out of those two for the fourth.
Coaches.
Coaches, man, Nick Sick's been a huge asset to me. Like I think he's one of the few guys that's in a big box gym that still has maintained the compassion of like a small gym coach, and that means a lot to me. Like some of these coaches that are up there, they like won't even like nod to me. They're still like they think they're above me in these like locker rooms or these other places, and I see him talking to other coaches, and like I'm like, dude, like we're all the freaking same thing, like they almost like honestly, like winning that coach of the year thing was almost like one of the worst things from a social standpoint in the coaches world because I think like it drew a line like where some of the people like the Nick Sixers, well, he won it with me, but like the Nick Six and some other coaches were like so supportive, and then those other guys didn't reach out, and it almost like made the guys that didn't reach out. It was like they made that decision that night. We're like, all right, f that kid. It's like I'm like, dude, I didn't give myself the award. Like I'm just trying to help my guys get better. But so like, yeah, so Nick Sick, I guess say like Mike Brown. He's a guy that I respect a lot. Like I've been able to, and I don't abuse it, but I've been able to call him a few times over the years and just ask him questions. Man, it's like I find reasons to not like coaches more than I find reasons. I gotta say like Brock Larson, not Brock Lesnar, Brock Larson. He's a coach out of Minnesota. He we worked together on some guys out of Minnesota that moved to Boston. So I met him. He used to be in the UFC, fought for a
Yeah.
WEC title and stuff like that. Like he's not like there's no brand recognition there, like from a coaching standpoint, but like he really taught me like the importance of having a coach that's selfless. This guy here, he's got like probably 15 UFC fights, fought for one FC title, a WEC title. He's done all that, and here he is like carrying dirty laundry on weight cuts. Where I see some of these other coaches that are like, oh, I graduated past that, or I don't do that anymore. It's like, no, this guy's doing the same thing he did on day one in year 30 with like an amateur fighter that has no potential of ever even turning pro, let alone going to the UFC. So I think
Right.
like to me that's something that like stands out a lot. So I don't know. I'm just gonna go with those three. But what would be yours?
Oh, I don't know, man. I mean, to be honest with you, it doesn't even have to be in MMA. I was just wondering who you draw from, and you're a coach, you're a mentor. People look to you for guidance, and as a coach, I was just kind of wondering who you look to keep your guidance going and mentor you in your continuing education because I know you're always trying to get better.
Yeah. So like I'll talk to, and I don't even know if you would consider this outside the sport, but like young coach Sean Madden, he's a striking coach out of Denver. He used to work
Mm,
with Cory Sandhagen, those guys. He was with Elevation for a while, but me and him just kind of crossed paths a couple times. We started networking on Instagram, whatever, and then I would say probably like once a quarter we probably hit each other up, maybe have a phone call. I ask him for advice because he's got a lot of cycles on the Muay Thai side with a lot more fights. So like sometimes when I'm kind of struggling with something or I need some insight from someone fresh that's not emotionally invested into the issue I'm dealing with or the questions I
yeah,
have, I'll ask him and get like a perspective outside MMA. And that's pretty nice to get some, a perspective from someone like that. And then other coaches, like, we go up to Toronto and see Bazooka Joe, and he's from the kickboxing world. So you get a totally different perspective there. And you get some like their views on like what they see like, oh, I've been watching Calvin's fights. I see this, and it's like, oh man, I like that because I don't
yeah.
have that lens anymore. I'm
They're
so
specialists, right? They're specialists.
exactly, and I'm so deep with like what I know about Calvin that I have certain blind spots. Like, and so getting a perspective for someone like Bazooka Joe with like, hey, I think this would work for Calvin. What do you think? It's like, well, teach it to him. And
Yeah,
yeah, so I think there's definitely like coaches I like in my network that I can call to and ask like professional advice. Like, I've called Mike Brown a few times. Me and Eric talk pretty regularly.
yeah,
Because he's another guy that's going through this whole journey with kids. And one thing is
yeah.
like I asked Eric, I was like, he's got the advantage of being in Vegas, but I called him, because you're always trying to balance like being the best coach you can be, but also like I don't want to be a bad father, and that's always like,
That's the other thing, man. The price of greatness,
and there's no greatness in guaranteed.
right? Or the pursuit of greatness, we'll say.
Yeah, the pursuit of greatness, because people could argue like, oh, you guys are mediocre, you're not winning main events. It's like, okay, we win half our main events, we suck. But to do that, like I was asked Eric, I was like, how many nights were you on the road last year? And he went and counted, and he's like, oh, I think he said 56 or 60 or whatever. And I'm like, I was on the road 113 nights in 2022. So that's like 113 nights. So one out of every 3 nights, like my kids are waking up and daddy's not here. It's tough, man. And it's like,
And that crosses all domains. I mean, I look at people who are at the top of their fields, but they've definitely sacrificed a whole lot on the family front, on the relationship front, friendship front. You know, some people they want that at all costs, and some people are happy with the balance. You know, or find the balance.
it's it's tough. The only thing I can think is like I always look at life as like I'm writing a book. Like I'm the author of my book, right?
Yeah.
And my kids, they're sort of reading the cliff notes as they go, but at the end, like when they turn the, you have that epiphany moment with your parents when you got to a certain age, you kind of made a decision like, oh, like you either got it or you didn't, or now you, all those things that used to bother you about your parents, now you understand it and you appreciate it. But you kind of have that epiphany where like your parents stop being your heroes and they start being a person that you can relate to, and then you get to kind of judge them for whatever reason. And like at some point, my kids are going to read that book with that lens, and I just hope they've also found something that they're extremely passionate about, and they're like, no, I get it. Like he freaking chased his dream. Like and like they look at the time that I had away, they look at it as it was a sacrifice I made, not like a neglect I made. I can just do my best to kind of control the narrative on that. But like whenever I'm home, I'm home. Like our team practices are based around me trying to be home to help put the kids to bed. Like even setting up this interview, I'm like, oh, we can do 8 o'clock because I put the kids to bed at 7:30. Like I really try to be cognizant of that and like know that like, all right, maybe I have to be gone one out of every 3 nights, but the 2 nights I'm here, like I'm gonna be, I'm gonna be here, and that's a balance too because then you get 30 athletes you're working with that all want answers on everything right away, and responsiveness is important. So it's definitely it's a battle that you fight every day, and I just hope that there's not severe consequences at the end of this.
I think that's a fantastic outlook, and I think you're absolutely right. One day they will recognize what Dad was doing, and it'll be that epiphany for them. I'm going to leave you with one more question. What does it take to be a good coach, or what makes a good coach?
I think the biggest thing is like you can't have an ego. If you have an ego, you're gonna, I heard Sean Madden actually said this eloquently. It's like the best fighters in the world are extremely selfish because they have to be, right? The best coaches in the world are extremely selfless because they have to be. If a coach was selfish or he had the ego that goes along with like a fighter's going to be, they're going to treat you in ways they shouldn't treat you because like it's not respect. Like they just don't text you back, or they're pissed off one day so they yell at you and they just take it off with people they love, and stuff like that. If you have that ego, you're gonna like stand up to those moments and challenge them and do that, and like it's not gonna work. Like you have to realize you got to take some egg on your face for the greater good. Like you got to choose your battles. You got to kind of go through some dark moments and realize that like listen, like they've got to be selfish. They got to kind of put everybody to the side to get what they need. And obviously there's situations where you can't tolerate it, but you can't have that ego. You can't, because then with the ego, you see like when the guy loses, the coach ain't in the background. He's off to the side talking shit about why he lost. When the guy wins, he's right there holding the mic, being like, "Look, I showed you that move. I showed you that move." Like you can't have that ego. You gotta. It's literally like my motto is like when they lose, get get in front of the cameras, absorb the loss, deflect it. When they win, push the lights towards them. And like I think if you can do that all the time, the fighters see it. They know who acts different when the cameras are around. They know who doesn't act different. Like they know who's like really like putting their interest in front of their own. Like I think if you can truly be selfless and like just try to take blame and give credit. And if you can just do that all the time, I think you're just going to be that much better. But some of these coaches, they want to be famous. They want to, yeah, man, you just got to stick to your core competency. Some of these coaches, man, they start to get a little shine. Next thing you know, they're trying to be celebrities, or they're trying to like, oh, I got to go hold mitts for this famous person or that famous person, or I got to go. A new fighter comes in, and now you're holding mitts for him, but you don't hold mitts for your younger fighters because you say they got to earn it. And the fighters see it. They're not stupid. So I think stick to your core competency, which is grinding. Grinding as a coach. Grind, do everything that it takes to help that fighter win, and never stop doing it. And then hopefully good things will come.
Well said, brother. Well, Tyson, I really appreciate it, man. Thanks for all the insight and all the wisdom and your time. Where can people find you at if you want to be found?
Yeah, Instagram, it's Tyson _Chartier. Yeah, any Cartel MMA. That's our team page. But yeah, we're just keep everything pretty active and get some wins coming up here.
All right, man. Best of luck, and we'll talk to you down the line. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, brother.